IntellectualRadio.com, where we feed your brain. My goal is to provide you, the listeners of IntellectualRadio.com, with information regarding the world that surrounds yourself. You are a spiritual presence in human form, and the world that surrounds you is an energy being in itself. I want to help you be able to apply the information I'm going to share to your life, and then help you with practical exercises and steps that you can do on your own time to help yourself heal, to feel better, and to grow. Today's topic is energy vampires. And if you go online and you do a Google search, you're going to find a number of articles that pop up regarding energy vampires. And in my experience, everybody has encountered an energy vampire. And your experience is going to go way beyond anything that you will find information-wise on the internet. So, for a definition of what is an energy vampire is a person who consciously or unconsciously drains other people's personal energies. We're talking about your energetic physical energy. This isn't just a feeling that you have where somebody is exhausting around you. They're actually physically draining your energy out of your energy form, and they're taking it away from you for their own personal use. Now, I want to state that an energy vampire is not necessarily somebody who's difficult to be around. A lot of people will say, oh, that person has a difficult personality. I don't like being around that person. And yes, there's plenty of people who can fit the category of being a difficult person or being unpleasant to be around, but that doesn't make them an energy vampire. Energy vampires deplete your personal energy to the point where you can end up with damage on the emotional level, damage on the energetic level, damage on the physical level, and you can end up in a serious illness as a result of somebody draining you on a regular basis. And there is a big difference between just feeling drained because somebody's unpleasant and you don't like being around them, and then physically being drained because somebody has stolen your personal energy. Now, when I say that somebody is taking your personal energy, I mean that you encounter someone who you have a meeting with, you're talking, you're having coffee, you're interacting with them. They're walking by you at the mall, and they will walk past you, and they will take your personal energy that you use to maintain your health, your emotional well-being, your balance, and they take that away from you, and they use it for their own personal reasons. Now, sometimes the person who is an energy vampire is aware of what they're doing. Sometimes they are not. Usually, when somebody is an energy vampire, it's because they're doing it unconsciously for their personal reasons. But there's also a second reason why they do that, and that's because they have something attached in their own personal energy that requires a larger source of energy than what that person can provide. And so that attachment is going to nudge the person into taking your personal energy. Most of the time, people don't realize that what they're doing is actually feeding something that's attached to them. And it's unconscious all in all. But there's a small percentage of people who are aware, and they are consciously doing this. So where do you encounter an energy vampire? Well, energy vampires are everywhere. You know someone. I can tell you that right now. Whether it's somebody in your family who is a friend, a coworker, somebody you know at church, or somebody where you shop. Energy vampires exist in every arena of our life. There's nothing that excludes them from any any area in our life. And so how do you know? Well, they have certain personality types and they follow certain behaviors. But what's important to start with is recognizing how you feel when you are around someone who is an energy vampire. Victims of energy vampires generally feel physically drained, even to the point of exhaustion. Sometimes they're emotionally upset, and sometimes they can go all the way to being emotionally unstable around someone like that. Some people have an instantaneous feeling of being sick to their stomach as soon as they have that feeling about being around someone. Some people feel slimed as if they're covered in an ick. And some people can experience really bad headaches. All of these sensations are interacting with you on the physical level. They're the symptoms that you're feeling, but they're in response to what the person is taking from you. Your energy vampire is going to leave the encounter with you feeling energized. And if they were in a poor mood before, they're going to be feeling very satisfied and generally more upbeat and raring to go, whereas you're going to be that limp, dirty dishcloth laying on the floor going, what happened to me? I feel like I've been hit by a Mack truck. And it happens a lot more than people are aware. But most people develop unhealthy patterns of behavior as coping mechanisms for dealing with these individuals, especially when they are either in a place of authority in the family or in a work environment. The ability to emotionally balance your personal needs has been worn away. And this person is just taking advantage of you time and time again. On the more downside of that is the more worn down that you are, the stuff that is attached to you is thus going to be able to interact with you on a more detrimental level. Think of it in terms of a medical situation. Let's just say you have pneumonia. You're in a depleted state. You have to take care of yourself physically, or you could get even worse. Well, when you're in a depleted situation like that, you have to be careful because you can become, worse in other ways, such as becoming septic, which is a blood poisoning. And that's sort of the way, bad terms, but similar situations. You've been depleted, your energy is at a very low point, and now the stuff that's attached to you is going to attack you as well, and you're going to feel even worse because they're going to try to take and assert a power position over you and influence you. So on a detrimental level, it's a situation that you need to be very aware of because only you can take care of you. Now, the typical personality types of an energy vampire are pretty common throughout our society. Just because somebody may exhibit these personality types does not mean that they're an energy vampire. They go hand in hand with having a gift called empathy, and we'll discuss that in a minute. But these personality traits have a tendency to be predominant within individuals who are energy vampires. Many of them are extroverted, especially in small groups or a one-on-one situation. I would say about 98% of them dominate in a one-on-one or a small group environment. They don't necessarily behave in an extroverted way in large groups or in large public settings, but when they are in that small group, they have to be the king or queen of the environment. And they are going to dominate it, and they are going to pretty much make sure it's an all about them show. And they don't really care whether you perceive them as obnoxious or whether you perceive them as being nice. Some of them can be very charming, extroverted, happy, fun, but you have to take that into account with how you feel and the other things that are occurring to determine whether or not the person is an energy vampire. They are all drama-ridden. They always seem to have something happening in their life. They're always being used by other people. They're victimized by such and such circumstances. You name it, they're going to have a sad story to bring out. And even if it's an entertaining sad story, the story is designed to elicit an emotional response from you. That's their goal, because they want to feed off your emotional energy. It gives them a better access to your personal energy. So the truth of it is, even if somebody is saying they don't like drama and they don't know why things are happening to them, they actually seek out drama so that they can bring that aspect into their life. Energy vampires frequently cause arguments because arguments cause drama, which gives them another opportunity to feed off of. An argument happens when you have a vested interest in something. You believe in something. You may be compassionate about that something. And an energy vampire is going to know that, and they're going to push that button and trigger that response, because then when you become emotionally upset, you have an abundance of energy. You know, people get very emotionally upset, they get going and blah, 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 they're just raging. And that's just a great big old buffet for an energy vampire, so that they can just feed off your energy, and they're going to feel great when they get done with it, and you're going to be upset and you're not going to be happy. Now, they also have physical boundaries. A lot of energy vampires have a tendency to get touchy-feely. They want that hug when they meet you, and then when they say goodbye, they want to hug goodbye. And sometimes, if you know them in an intimate situation, whether it's a partner or a family member, they may want you to sit right by them. They may reach out and frequently touch you. When they do that, they are actually going in and putting in what you might want to say is more energy feelers, more ability to be able to draw more energy. This goes the same hand in hand with emotional boundary issues. If they know you have issues and you don't want to talk about them, or they know that you have a history of being upset or sensitive about something, somehow they're going to push that button. They're not respecting you. They haven't forgotten that this is an issue that you don't want to talk about. They're counting on the fact that you are going to have an emotional issue with this situation, and they're going to count on that, push it, feed it, nudge it, shove you off the cliff until you have that breaking point and you lose it, and you lose your cool, and they have the opportunity to get in there and feed off of you. It goes without saying that there's hidden agendas, personal motivations. And I want to point out that while you'll find a lot of narcissistic people, a lot of manipulative people who are energy vampires, it does not mean that there aren't kind people and nice people who are energy vampires. They come in all walks of life. You can have the nicest person who's going to give you the shirt off their back, but in a one-on-one situation, if they are not aware of what they're doing, they're going to use every opportunity to feed off of you and take your energy and use it for their own. Because the goal of all energy vampires is to get what they want when they want it. And what they want is your time, your attention, and your emotions, so that they can steal your personal energy. Now, there's always that opportunity that if you bring it to the person's attention about how you feel when you're around them, that you feel that it's not a healthy situation, without naturally, calling them an energy vampire, because that would have a tendency to make people upset. There's always that small percentage of people who may listen to that, who may step back, and they might start thinking about what they do and why they do. But the majority won't. They're not even going to consider what you're saying. Instead, they're going to fall into the victim role. They're going to flip that conversation. They're going to blame you and say that you're saying ugly things about them. And they're going to do this wonderful little contrivance of it's your problem, it's your fault, you shouldn't have done that, you've hurt my feelings. And again, you end up in the middle of a situation that's an emotional pool of mess. So these are the basics of the type of personalities that are at the basis of emotional vampires. But in general, look at the people around you and their level of respect. Do they respect other people? Do they respect other people's boundaries? Do they respect other people's emotional situations or the situations that are going on in their life? Or is it really, it's a play about them, the environment, their life, it's all about them, and everybody else are the little audience to watch, or the people to change the props, or the people to change the clothes? Energy vampires don't play nice in the fact that they don't give equal time and attention to anyone else. It's all about them. And to give a better illustration of this, I'm going to actually use a few examples of people that I have encountered in the past who I got to know fairly well in my path to being where I am today. And in my path, I had to learn to recognize who these people were in the essence that they were trying to steal my energy. So the first person was a lovely woman. She was an older woman. I met her when I was in my late 30s, and I was going through my divorce process. And she had gone through a strikingly similar life as me, with the husband and the career and the children and the disastrous marriage and the ugly divorce. And so in our conversations, she expressed empathy and sensitivity to what I was going through. She was a kindred spirit. I thought she really understood and cared for me because of what we talked about in that. But as I got out of my stress-induced situation and I was able to start thinking a little more clearly, as opposed to the blinders of going through something traumatic like the divorce, I started to realize that 90% of our conversations were all about her. They were about her ex-husbands, who she had 3, and they had been divorced for decades. But for some reason, she felt the need to bring them up. She would talk about her adult children and the traumas that they had experienced when they were children going through the divorce process. And while I was going through my divorce process, it seemed very natural for her to be able to share some of these stories. But after the process was complete and life had shifted, she remained rooted in these very drama-ridden situations. And I began to notice it time and time and time again. What she was wanting from me was to have the emotional reaction of empathy, of that kindred spirit of, I know it's hard for you, and feeling sympathy, anger. And I would end up getting all riled up, and she would be just fine because these things had happened years ago to her. But yet I was living them with her through her stories, to the extent that I became emotionally concerned. Once I realized what was happening, I took a step back. I looked at the situation for how I was feeling when I left these encounters, and I started realizing that even though she was a lovely person in many ways, very charming, lots of fun to be around, I was leaving her apartment exhausted, and as soon as I would get home, I would have to go to bed. Even if I had several hours prior to my normal bedtime, I was having to go to bed because I was feeling depleted. I was feeling ill, and I needed that extra downtime to recover from what had happened. Now, there's another situation that I had encountered, which was with a woman that I worked with in the corporate environment. And she was slightly older than me. She was in her 40s. She was a mid-level manager, so she had a fair amount of responsibility. She had a nice income. We would talk, and eventually over a period of a year or so, we became friends. She came to my home. loved the neighborhood I lived in and decided to build a home there, which, if you've ever had the opportunity to buy a home, it's a very stressful process, but it's very exciting. You have this wonderful thing happening where you can be in a place that's yours, you can have all of your stuff around you, and most people look forward to that. But she didn't. She was very apathetic. She was very listless. She was very depressed. And we started talking. And I learned some things. Her sister had died a couple years prior to our meeting. And she talked to her mother on a regular basis. Well, as she bought her home here and built it in North Carolina, her mother was started to call every day. And she would end up on the phone for 3 hours with her mother, as her mother would talk about the loss of her sister, about how she missed her not living in state with her, how she wanted her to come home. And we got together one day, and I just sat there and I looked at her on the energetic level. And she looked like a porcupine. She looked like a pincushion. There were all of these things that were just sticking all through her energy layers. And I sat there and I looked at her and we started talking about it. And, it's one thing to talk about something and it's another thing to actually do something. I assisted her. We got her cleaned up. We talked about protecting herself. We talked about putting boundaries in place, and her mother was one of these typically nice people. She, helped the neighbors. She went to church. She did all the right things. But, she was in pain. And so my friend sat there and said, well, she couldn't cut her mother off. She couldn't limit her time because her mother was in so much pain because of her daughter dying. And I said, well, you have to look at it from the viewpoint that you are in physical pain. Your physical state is not well. You can barely walk around the neighborhood where before you walked around with great speed. I said, you have no energy, you have no enthusiasm, your career is suffering because she started getting comments made to her by her boss that she was unable to complete work projects. I said, you have to put yourself first here. Talk to your mom, sure, but put limitations in place. Protect yourself energetically while caring for somebody. I said, if you can't do that, you're going to end up in a worse situation. Well, she understood that, but she didn't do anything to change it. She didn't do anything to change it. Within 6 months, she had lost her job. She ended up moving back home to this other state where her mother resided and moving in with her mother. And there was no economy in that area of the state that she lived in. It was a depression environment. There were no jobs. So she would call me and we would talk, but I couldn't do anything for her. She had to be the one to lift herself up out of that situation. And the last time we communicated, she was in a physically worse situation where she'd been going in and out of the clinic in town. And it's one of those points that illustrates the fact that when somebody is constantly taking your energy, you don't have reserves that are limitless. Everybody has energy that's flowing into them. Everybody has energy that's flowing through their chakras, into their auric layers, in and out of their meridians. You have a certain amount of energy that's present as well as a certain amount that's coming in. But just like when you kink a water hose, you may have a full stream of water coming out, but when you kink that hose, it goes down to a trickle, or in some cases, it stops. Many times it happens because there's a blockage, but the same effect takes place when an energy vampire is taking your energy. You are basically giving them your energy when you do not stand up for yourself and put some boundaries in place. Now, I want to talk a little bit about how these people exist. How do they come to be? Well, in energetic terms, for an individual to become an energy vampire, for them to be able to pull energy from other people, They have to have the gift of empathy, but it's receptive empathy that they have. There are two types of empathy gifts. There's projective empathy and there's receptive empathy. Projective empathy is when you, in your emotional state, project your emotions and your energy out to other people. In happy situations, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But when you might be distressed or deeply upset and you project your emotions, that can be a negative thing because that can affect somebody else in a negative way. It's like hitting somebody with a stick. They didn't do anything to deserve to be hurt, but yet you have dumped your energy and your emotions onto them just because you have this innate ability of being able to project. Receptive empaths are opposite. They receive other people's energies, and it's a little bit different from if you're projective and you're just sending your emotions out there, you're sending it out willy-nilly, and anybody in your radius is going to get it. If they're receptive, they're going to feel it more keenly, but other people are still going to feel things. When you are receptive, that means that you're wide open all the time. You're feeling everybody's energy, or maybe just a few select people if you're in a small group, but you are capable of feeling other people's energies, and there's a way to develop that. But in a receptive mode, you are pulling in, and energy vampires switch on that receptive mode. So they're actually using their gift to harm other people because they're receiving other people's energies without those people actually saying, sure, you can have my energy. Now, this may sound inflammatory to some people, but on the energetic and karmic level, that's equivocal to rape. When you have a rape occur on the physical situation, you have somebody who's imposing their will onto another person, and they're ignoring that person's free will choice, whether they are not agreeing to it or whether they're in a state where they can't agree to it. When you're physically raping somebody, you are taking away their right to their free will choice. The same is taking place on the energetic level. Somebody is going in to someone else's energetic space, which is extremely personal to them. They're not asking if they can have that energy, and then they're taking it without letting that person know. And it's a situation that can create karmic results. Now, another thing that can happen is you can have somebody who is receptive and projective at the same time. It's possible. And that person may reach out to grab your energy and pull it in, but then they may also project the stuff that they have with them into your energy field. And so let's go back to when we were first talking about how people feel. And there was that one with where you feel like you've been slimed, where you feel kind of icky. That takes place generally when somebody has projected their ick into your field. You now have somebody else's ick attached to your energy. And it's literally, it's like that was a Nickelodeon show where they would drop all that gooky stuff down on top of it. It's nasty. But on the energetic level, you're having that happen, and it's very difficult to get rid of that stuff, almost impossible if you don't even know what's happened to you. And so it's one of those situations where you look at it and you're like, well, I wouldn't voluntarily say, sure, throw your ick at me and take my good energy away. That's great with me. That's going to make my day. I'm going to feel wonderful after that. But that's what they do. And they count on you not knowing. And honestly, most energy vampires really aren't aware of what they're doing, but that's what's taking place. Now, the second thing to think about is the fact that when you have something negative attached to you and you're a receptive empath and you're not really aware of what's going on, this detritus that's attached to you has the ability to manipulate you, whether it's a form of detritus, which is a lower entity, or whether it's a demonic, which is the higher level thinking capabilities, when it's attached to you, it creates a sensation within you that's sort of like an urge, like an addiction. If you have cigarettes, if you drink, if you do drugs, whatever your addiction is, whether it's eating potato chips or having to have sugar, when you are at a point where your body has stated, your body is not getting enough, whether its sugar level is low or whether that cigarette urge is there, you're going to feel the sensation where you've got to do something. People who smoke go out and smoke because that's how they satisfy their urge. When you have detritus and demons that are attached to you, they're going to do something very similar to that person who they're attached to. And that urge is going to send them out. And they're actually going to look for somebody to feed off of. That's the whole vampire part. It's not a nice thing. It could be that you're sitting at work, you're doing your work, and all of a sudden somebody's in your cubicle, and you're like, hi. And you're like, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, I just wanted to come and talk to you. And they're invading your space. It could be you get a phone call from somebody, because energy doesn't have physical limitations. So it could be that if they know that they've fed off of you prior, unconsciously, they're going to give you a call because they can tap into it. I know somebody on a regular basis who tries to create drama situations, and they'll call up. And I'll be like, I can't talk to you right now. Send me an email or send me a text. I'm like, but I really got to share this situation that just happened with you. And I'm like, I don't have time. I'm putting my boundary in place because I know all they want is to get a reaction from me. You'll find that the more you put these barriers in place and protect yourself, that these people will start to fade away because they're going to find somebody else who's readily available, who's, are you going to sit there and take the food off the table, or are you going to go hunt it down? You're going to take the food off the table. It's quick and it's easy. And they are no different. They're going to do the same thing, even though they're not conscious of what they're doing. So we come to the big question of, what can I do? How can I protect myself? What is there that's possible to do? Because in a lot of situations, you may not feel like there's much that you can do to protect yourself. Well, you've got to. The number one thing that I try to teach everybody that comes to me is you and you alone are the only person who is responsible for taking care of yourself, for protecting yourself, for creating an environment for which you to live. Nobody else is going to do it. And if you push that responsibility onto someone else and you abdicate your power over to that person, you're going to have situations happen and that person's not going to be there. You are the only one who can help yourself with anything. And this is the only way that this particular type of situation is resolved, because the number one thing that you have to do is be aware of how you feel when you are around people. And yeah, a lot of us like to zone out. We're with friends. We're not thinking about how we're necessarily feeling physically. We're usually feeling, emotionally, I'm having a good time. Oh, I've started having a stomach ache. Oh, I hope this doesn't ruin my good time. And then you push that idea of the stomach ache to the side. You're not going to think about it because you want to focus on having a good time with your friends. Or you've walked into the restaurant and you're finally getting seated. After you're seated, you don't want to leave because it's taking you so long to get a table, but you're feeling crappy all of a sudden. It's out of the blue. That's the thing, is these things happen suddenly. It's not a gradual oncoming situation where you can say, yeah, I'm going to regret eating that in a few hours because I know I'm going to have an upset stomach. These things come out of the blue because you're interacting with someone else's energy. So the first thing, be aware of you. Be aware of how you feel. Be aware of how you are feeling in regards to different people. You will be able to determine which person it is that you are around that's making you feel this way? Maybe it's a one-on-one situation. You're having coffee with a friend in their living room. There's nobody else around. Well, the chances are that's the person who's feeding off of you. Or maybe you are at a restaurant. How can you figure out what to do? Well, situation is pretty similar. You try to feel where it is. Did you feel good coming all the way up and then you sat down, and after you sat down you were feeling that way? Was it after you talked to the waiter? Was the waiter or the waitress, you were feeling good up until the point where you interacted with them? Did they get up close and personal in your space, and then all of a sudden you felt very crappy? Or are you sitting next to another table? You can sit there and, in worst case scenarios, get up, walk over by there, feel if you feel worse or if you feel better. The easy fix in a restaurant is you ask to get moved to another table as soon as there's an opening, but the damage is done to the extent that part of your energy has been taken away from you. Or you just go for it and you just say, I can't, I'm not feeling well, I need to leave. And you leave, and then you see, how are you feeling? Maybe you tell your friends, you sit here at the table, I'm going to go outside for a few minutes and get some fresh air and see if that helps me. If you start feeling better when you're outside, you know darn well that there's something going on at the table. And if you know it's not your friends, then you know it's somebody who's sitting around you or somebody that you're interacting with. So you have to take care of yourself by being aware. Now, I will state for the record that when you're in a work environment and you are working with somebody who is an energy vampire, that is probably the absolute worst situation. I worked with someone, we used to call her the pterodactyl. This was a woman who literally took great joy from other people's pain. I watched her company went through numerous layoffs, and every time she was the happiest camper on the planet. She had the biggest smile on her face when she was laying somebody off. She was just feeding off of all of the energy and just really enjoying it. If you happen to, unfortunately, be working with someone in a position of power like that, there's not a lot of choices you have for abdicating the position unless you happen to be independently wealthy and can just quit your job and walk away. So when we get down to it, what can we do? Well, there's a couple things that you can do. One is the basic staple that I teach everyone, which is the shielding exercise. The shielding exercise keeps your energy and your emotions inside the shield, and it keeps everybody else's outside the shield. And we're going to get to that in a minute. But the other thing that you can do is develop some support systems, whether you want to use essential oils or whether you want to bring in crystals to help you. There are certain things that help to reinforce your personal energy boundaries. And one of the things that I'm going to recommend is a stone called tourmaline. Tourmaline is generally a black stone with striations, but it's not only a grounding stone, but it is a protective stone that reinforces protective energies around you, so that even if you are having problems and you're struggling with your personal shielding, tourmaline is a stone that's going to help support you and give you extra energy that you need when you need it. But let's go back to the shielding exercise. Now, shielding is something that everybody can do. I've taught this exercise to 5-year-olds, so I know everybody can do it. And you don't have to believe in the angels or light beings or anybody else to be able to do this exercise. I knew somebody who was in special ops for about 20 years. And when I tried to teach him this exercise, he looked at me and he explained that basically he had, during one of his trainings, been taught the same exercise from one of the instructors. And it was an exercise to help support them mentally if they were in a captured situation and being tortured. And I thought it was very interesting because from his point of view, they used it as a mental exercise to prevent themselves from mentally being deteriorated. But this is for your energy field. And so I'm going to lead you through it really quickly, but I will state that it is online. It's on my website at thespiritualmentor.org under the tab for Michael, Archangel Michael, Slayer of Demons and Collectors of Souls. And this is something that you can do silently. You can do it anywhere, preferably not while operating a vehicle or heavy equipment because you need to close your eyes. But if you're at work, you can do it. If you're in the mall, you can step aside and lean against the wall and do it. You can do this at school. You can do this in any environment because it only takes a few moments. But it's those few moments that are going to help protect your energy from anybody else taking it away. Now, what I want you to do is when you're listening to this now, I just want you to close your eyes. I want you to sit. I want you to relax. I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to just take a few long, deep breaths in and out of your stomach, not your lungs, but through the stomach area. It's going to send a signal to the brain that it's safe to relax. And various glands in your brain are going to release hormones that are telling you that it's safe. So you create a nice little cycle of relaxation. So I want you to just keep breathing long, slow, deep breaths, blowing out just as slowly. And I want you to get into a state of comfort. You are in a safe place. This is perfectly fine. You're having a good time and you're safe. Now, I want you to visualize in front of you a column of light. I want you, ridiculous as you may feel that it sounds, I want you to invite into your space in front of you Archangel Michael. 100% of the light, 100% here for your highest and best good. And I want you to allow yourself a moment to feel him. So what if you don't feel him? That's all right. I want you to just keep doing the exercise. It can take people about 2 weeks. If they've never done energy work before, a good 2 weeks before they become sensitized enough to feeling Michael's energy. But I want you to just sit there and breathe slowly. And I want you to allow yourself the opportunity of feeling the presence that Michael is in front of you. Michael's energy is very strong. It's very pure. He is the slayer of demons and the collector of souls. He is the arch nemesis of all the detritus that exists on this planet. And he is going to protect you. So I want you to allow yourself to visualize him in front of you. And as you're breathing and you're watching, they're standing next to you on the left. And we're going to say, that surrounds me. And he's going to stand there on the left for another moment. And then he's going to start walking around behind you. And you're going to say, this is the circle that protects me. And he's going to be there a moment. And then he's going to walk up to your right-hand side. And you're going to say, this is the circle that guides me. And after a moment, he's going to walk to the front again. And you're going to say, this is the circle that heals me. You're putting in place boundaries. You've called upon an archangel that's 100% of the light, who's going to surround you with his energy. He's going to protect you. He's going to guide you, and he's going to allow healing vibrations to come in and help you. Now, we're going to do this 3 more times, and I'm going to walk you through this, and I want you to feel, to see if there's any shift in change and how you feel. So he stands in front of you, keeping your eyes closed. You're still breathing deeply, and he walks to the left, and you say, this is the circle that surrounds me. And he walks to the back, And you say, this is the circle that protects me. And he walks to the right. And you say, this is the circle that guides me. He was the front. This is the circle that heals me. I want you to just keep breathing. Long, slow, deep breaths. This can take longer for some people, and it may be quicker for others. Don't push yourself. Just allow the sensations and the experience to happen, because it's going to complete. Now, when you're ready and he's back out in front of you again, I want you to go ahead and do it one more time. And he's going to walk to the left, and you say, this is the circle that surrounds me. He walks to the back. This is the circle that protects me. He walks up to the right. This is the circle that guides me. And he walks back to the front. This is the circle that heals me. Now, I recommend strongly that everybody does this before they get out of bed in the morning, before they go to bed at night, and as often as you need to during the day. If you leave to go to work every day, I recommend you do it in your car before you leave your driveway so that your car is protected while you're driving. If you work in an office, cubicle environment, do it once you get in. Put that protective barrier around your space. Before you leave work to go home, do it again so that your car is again protected. And when you get home, as you feel is appropriate, do it again. There's no such place as an energetically safe place. Just because you go home doesn't mean that it's immune to anything or anyone. You want to make sure that you are protected wherever you're at. And so you do this. And you do it in sets of 3, because 3 is how he does it. And it creates a barrier, not just in front of you and behind you, but over you. He seals the top and he seals the bottom so nothing can find its way in. And it creates a bubble around you that's going to keep you safe. Now, I want to bring up one more point about this bubble. This bubble keeps your energy in, and it keeps other people's energies out. Should you start to feel uncomfortable because of the shielding, do not take it down. There is something that is distressed because you have Michael's energy in your space. Should you feel distress, I ask that you call on Michael to take it away. The second thing about it is, while in our psyche as humans, we don't ever want to see ourselves as the bad person. We don't want to see ourselves as the person who might inadvertently harm someone else. But the reality is, there's a certain percentage of people who are going to do this, who are going to become uncomfortable because when they are around other people, they're no longer going to be able to reach out to those people's energies. That's an indicator that you are an energy vampire. And this is your opportunity to make a change through awareness. Maybe you weren't aware before how much you depended on being around somebody else for their energy. Maybe you didn't realize the behaviors that you exhibited to be able to pull in other people's energies. I'm just going to put this out there before we finish the session today, that everybody who is receptive has the ability to do this work. And most people who are empathetic generally like to think of themselves as nurturers. Unfortunately, this is not a nurturing behavior when you are an energy vampire. And only you can stop your behavior, just as you are the only one who can protect yourself from other people who are this way. You are the only one who can stop behaving this way as well. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It just means that you're doing something at this point that you want to stop. And I'm saying you want to stop it because there are karmic repercussions for doing this type of behavior, especially once you are aware that you are doing this behavior. Just want you to think about that. I want everybody to know that if they have questions, they can go ahead and they can send them to me about this topic. I want to help as many people as possible become more aware of what they are. And you may find that during different periods of your life, you may not be an energy vampire, and then something may happen and you find yourself being that way. Just think about it. Just pay attention to who you are and how you feel. And that will give you something to grow on, something to consider. So this is Julia Knickerbocker, and this has been the Spiritual Mentor on IntellectualRadio.com, where we feed your brain. I thank you for joining me this week. I appreciate the opportunity to provide you with an alternative look at our reality and the lives that we live here. Please check out our website at spiritualmentor.org. I am archangelariel.com and shreddingthedarknesswithin.org. Please send me any questions that you may have to thespiritualmentor@gmail.com. I will get a response from you, but if you also would like to have a topic discussed, please send that to me as well. Thank you again, and please join me next Monday at 4 p.m. for the next session of The Spiritual Mentor on IntellectualRadio.com, where we feed your brain. Have a good day.